So this little itty bitty pine cone is actually dependent on this little backbash. Not directly, but it's kind of seems counterintuitive, right? This is the death of when this is fully grown, but that's kind of how the process of wildfires are. It is a whole circle that is continuous growth. Now, a lot of wildfires not be around Champaign-Urbana, but if you ever go into a place with forest during a dry season, learning about this process rather, can save your life. And I have spent many times in dry seasons because I'm trying to go to every national park in the United States. There's a lot of them. And with going to all those national parks, I've learned and researched quite a bit about wildfires. Now, wildfires have three major points. First, we have the start of the fire. Second, the control or the direction of the fire. And then finally, the after effects of said wildfire. So, wildfires start in two significant ways. First is natural. Now of these natural ways, the most common is lightning. And although it's the most common is lightning for natural, it is quite rare because many rare conditions need to be met. This can be seen in a quote from the University of Utah, that was last updated in 2020, says about 5.4 million acres were burned by human-caused wildfires. Only about 3.4 million acres were caused by natural fires. So that's quite a big difference. Now this kind of moves us down to how man-made wildfires are. So the first man-made wildfire is the improper use of campfires. A lot of times it's leaving embers, especially on windy days after the fire seems to be extinguished. And this is actually most common in dry seasons, which are the hotter summer months, because people like to sleep with the campfire smoldering next to them to give you a little warmth in the cold of night. Now, my least favorite way wildfires start, one of the biggest reasons why Yellowstone started, is cigarettes. Not only do I have a distaste for cigarette smoke and the smell of it, it also is a silent killer of wildfire, of forests. Because many times you cannot see the embers that are still lit in an extinguished cigarette. There are still some embers that can light back up, especially in dry season. So you can kind of see how cigarettes are not only the silent killer to our own lungs, but also the Earth's lungs, or the trees. Now that we know how wildfires are started, we need to understand how to control the wildfires. So the wildfire control is essential to the forest survival. And not always can we use water for controlling the fire because during the dry season, like mentioned before, where many fires are. Sometimes they use the dirt or drought to suffocate the fire right there. A little bit more than a handful, usually tons of dirt at a time. And this can kind of be seen in a quote from IOP Science, that was last updated in 2020. It says, all methods divided into 4 groups: ground throwing, fire suppression with water, drawing ditches or hills, and then having a clean burn. Now, those ways may seem simple, but it really is kind of complex. Like the suppression of fire. Water is an effective way because of how well it extinguishes flames. We kind of all know that water and fire usually don't mix. Most of the time, water wins over. But the dirt and sand can be used in those drought seasons like I mentioned before. Now we're going to go on to the directing of fire. So directing a fire, a lot of times they might use trenches and hills because the fire likes to follow the path of least resistance. This way you can make sure the fire does not go into any specific areas like your nice lodge you have out in Yellowstone Park. Most people don't like it when their buildings get burned out. Now, the other way of directing fire is actually the intentional burn of some areas. It might seem kind of and counterintuitive, but it does remove the fuel of the fire. Thus, some beneficial effects from intentionally burning the forest. Now, after we've kind of burned down the forest, we have to look at what work needs to be done after the wildfire. So after the wildfire, there's plenty of work to be done. It's clearing a lot of the burnt wood, and that takes up space for new growth right there. This can be seen in a quote from USDA, that was last updated in 2020. The objective of the Burned Area Response Program is to identify post-wildlife threats to human, natural, property, and cultural safety. So not only are we looking after ourselves, we're trying to make sure the forests and the wildlife in that forest, as long as with little buildings and cultural heritage, to survive such fires. Now, plant life needs wildfires to regrow. As you can see, we have a little sapling growing out of a burnt tree there. The ash actually is a great resource for nutrients of these new wildlife that we just cleared the area for. And the fire, smoke, actually moves the seeds to give a larger biodiversity in the forest. Now, in conclusion, the process of wildfires can be dangerous, but understanding the start, the control of the fire, and the after effects, we can truly make sure that wildfires stay as a... I got distracted by that little symbol. I forgot to put them on there. Anyways, now when we look at the destruction of wildfires, like this ash over here, we have to remember how this ash can help this little pine cone to let life to continue on in the circle of life.